Hello and welcome to this ESEF chat. My name is Danny Northey. I'm the Director of Compliance here at Toppan Merrill. I'm joined today in the London office by both Tony Gaines and Martin Lawrenson from our ESEF Customer Service team. Guys, thanks for being here.
Nice to be here, Danny.
Today we're going to talk about all things ESEF, and we're going to talk about the regulations, we're going to talk about the new block tagging requirement, and we're also going to talk about the workflow that we need for this year. So guys, let's delve straight into it. Tony, can we start with the workflow process and how we can help clients with the ESEF filing submission?
Sure. Process theoretically is quite simple. We take the client's annual report as a clean PDF and we convert that to XHTML, and then we apply the tagging to it. Year one was a big learning curve. We learned a lot from that. And for year two, when we realised the tagging was going to be more complex, we took the decision to start the actual initial block tagging way in advance. So what we've done is we've applied the block tagging to the 2021 annual reports, which is on our system. And that is the kind of the bulk of the work up front. So 70% of the work is there. And then it's available for the clients, the teams to kind of review it, put comments in on it, and so forth going forward. The next stage is to take the client's skeleton draft of this year's 2022 kind of annual report. We take that for two reasons: to kind of convert it and apply or transfer the current tagging from their 2021 to that version, but also to check the fit of the file that we receive.
And where do you fit into this process in terms of from an XBRL point of view?
Yeah, so the XBRL really comes into place after that initial conversion of the PDF that Tony's talking about. Sort of when that has been done, we would apply the tags. And the process for that hasn't really changed that much compared to last year, other than that we obviously have to tag a whole lot more content now than what we had to do last year. I think we'll get into the block tags themselves soon, a little bit.
Yeah.
But I'd say the amount of work required has increased significantly for this second year. I would say it feels almost like it's a new mandate as opposed to just some additional parts to the already existing mandate. So there's a whole lot of more work this year, definitely.
So let's take that in context as well. Let's talk about the differences between last year, 2022, and obviously this year, 2023. We've got the block tagging. That's the new requirement that has come in this year as well. How has it fundamentally changed for you guys in terms of the workflow process and even dealing with clients? Because obviously they're learning it from a new way as well.
The main difference is probably that we need to, already from the onset, we know that we're tagging a much larger portion of the statement than we were last year. So last year we could focus on only a couple of pages, which were the primary financials. This year there will be tagging throughout the whole notes of the financial statements, so that could be hundreds of pages, as you know. Whereas last year, if there were any sort of technical issues in any other part of the statement, it wouldn't really be any issue. Whereas now, there's a much larger part of that document that we're processing that we need to quality check that everything comes into place. When it comes to the actual tagging of the document, from a timeline perspective, it's not that different, other than what I mentioned earlier, there's a whole lot more to do.
Yeah.
And it probably requires a little bit more understanding of the financial statements to be able to apply these new block tags that come with the new requirements. But other than that, the process is pretty similar to last year.
Let's talk about, you touched on it, the auditor, which is one of the big comments and the big review process. How have they fed into this? I know you've had experience on both of your sides, but how have they fed into this process? I guess there's a lot more work involved on that side as well.
Yeah, there is. I would say they were already heavily involved already last year, and they had quite a lot of input already last year, but this has added to that part of it as well.
And what do you think from your side? I mean, from your point, I would guess that you're getting a lot of comments back and they're having to process the file, but the key thing here is about making sure you get those comments early. And you can put in the preparation and the time involved to do that as well, correct?
Yeah, exactly as you said. So it's down to communication, and we welcome the comments nice and early. I mean, some of them, the files we receive and the comments in, because as you mentioned way back, what they're seeing is quite subjective. They know annual report better than the people applying the tags initially.
Yeah.
So that's the idea of the reviewing process. So yeah, we are getting a lot of comments through.
Let's talk about the major challenges this year, with particularly from the client's perspective as well, with the process that we've been talking about. What do you see, or what have you seen from the clients in terms of the challenges that they faced as well? We've talked about time quite a lot, making sure that a lot of it is upfront, but is there any other things that are really particularly important from your side?
I think from the XBRL side, the main challenge is the granularity of the tagging that needs to be applied. A lot of this process is kind of run starting with the auditors. We find that the auditors are often requesting a higher level of granularity to the tagging than what the clients would have provided in the initial draft. And these kind of changes or edits to the XBRL document, they take quite a lot of time to process often. And as I mentioned before, the feedback cycle can be quite challenging. We often receive these extensive Excel sheets from the auditors just filled with comments, take out this paragraph here, add another paragraph here, take out the header, things like that. And all these incremental edits take a lot of time to process.
Why is the review process for XBRL so important, particularly from the client side as well?
I think while we on our end have the technical knowledge about the XBRL, we'll produce compliant file sets that the client can file. And we do have professional accountants on our end who understand financial statements. But in reality, we as a service provider we're never gonna know as much about the financial statements as the clients that are actually, or the finance teams that are actually preparing the statements. So especially when it comes to these block tags, it requires a lot of detailed knowledge about the financial statements. You need to know where in the statements you find this disclosure, this policy. That's going to help you do it right. That's why we encourage the clients to review as much as possible. As I said, understanding block tagging isn't conceptually that difficult. It takes a lot of knowledge about the financial statements. Our part in that is more that we're more of someone who the client can bounce questions of with regards to should this thing be tagged with all these 3 tags, or we already have a tag there, does it need another tag? And that's kind of where we come into the picture, where we can kind of help the clients interpret the mandate and how the block tags should be applied.
And it's basically understanding those 252 tags, whatever number it is at that point, that
Exactly.
needs to be applied into your financial notes and accounting policies. Correct?
Exactly. If you read them, they are just, there's no complex definitions or anything of those elements. It's just a couple of words. Most of the textbook tags, it's not difficult for someone with an accounting background to understand what those tags mean. And the client will at the same time have that detailed knowledge about the financial statements, so they will be in a very good position to improve the quality of the filing, even if we make sure the more technical bits are taken care of.
And I'd say there's 2 parts to that as well. One is understanding exactly what the tag is and how it needs to be applied in your financials, but also the second bit is actually applying it, because that's where the time, effort comes as a big part of that process. And that's never really going to go away, is it? That's going to be year on year on year, because even though you've set up your tags, you're still going to have to make sure that whatever notes and whatever content you've changed, the tags still apply and everything still goes through. So there is a big time element on this part of actually doing that process, correct?
Yeah, and this is especially something that we see with clients that are filing XBRL files with the SEC, that on the SEC side, the block tagging requirements are quite simple. They have more of the 1 tag per note, 1 tag per policy approach. Whereas on the ESEF side, all of this is much more complex, because we don't start with the notes. We start with this list of mandatory textbook elements, and then we need to read the statements.
Yeah.
And that process is so much more time consuming and requires so much more input. Yeah. So the clients, their internal teams are in a good position to do that. It does take time. No matter who does it, it's going to take time, but it's going to add a lot of value to the block tagging.
And probably two bits on your side as well, Martin. You've obviously got the same, because I know that you're in contact with clients and going through and making sure that XBRL is up to date, but also really keeping the clients up to date with the regulations, because obviously this year is obviously the block tagging. There could be more going forward in the future as well, but just making sure that clients know exactly what's coming in and what needs to be done and how it's working, so that they can actually get a successful validated file that they need to submit, correct?
Yeah, especially with a mandate like this that's completely fresh now. It's only the second year, and 75% of what we're doing now wasn't even there last year. So there's a lot of firsts here now, and we need to stay up to date with everything as well.
I'm sure there'll be some tweaks to that manual for next year as well. So
and again, it's a gradual process that will be improved,
because they're learning as well.
Yeah, and that's the point. Is the whole point. I mean, obviously the ESEF taxonomy is going to be updated from year on year as well. So, but the point is that the regulations will improve, and those will be updated on a general basis, make it a little bit more, I would hope to say, smoother process. But that needs to be configured into it, and we need to keep the clients up to date with that as well.
I think the process will always be as smooth as you make it. You can gain a lot, as we said, from starting early. We can already see now that the clients that did start early and had the auditors highly engaged already during the fall, they are not struggling now. They're doing all right now. It doesn't have to be that painful, the use of mandates. It does become painful if you defer everything to the last 2 weeks, but
it's still possible. Still possible.
And it's still possible. It's just that you need to have someone who knows exactly what they're doing to be able to do that in the last 2 weeks as well, correct? So Tony and Martin, thanks for your time. Thanks for giving us some insight into the workflow, the XBRL procedure, the new blog tagging requirements as well. We look forward to a happy and successful filing season, and thanks very much everyone to listening to the conversation that we've had on ESEF today.